11th Hour on Radio Sri Lanka illustrates the rediscovery of the glitz and the glam of the nation's most prominent entertainers and eminent personalities from the corporate sector. Join us every Monday at 11 exclusively on Radio Sri Lanka.
The global education can be perceived as an effective way to support students' holistic academic, social and emotional development. Global learning enables students to take meaningful and purposeful action to improve their own lives and to positively influence the world around them. Global edification helps develop self-awareness of one's own identity, culture, beliefs, and how those connect with the wider world. What better way, rather, to entice students to practice this methodology? Of course, let's discuss in detail with Dr. Shaan Jayasekera, Director, KC Overseas and Alpha Business School, an industry expert to enlighten us more, who willingly connected with 11th Hour today. A very good morning to you, Doctor.
Good morning, Sabrina. It's a pleasure to be here, actually.
Right. Pleasure is always ours, Doctor.
Thank you.
Let's get about with our very first interesting question, rather, which I would presume. Global education, since lately, is certainly considered more important than ever before. Prestigious educational institutions play a pivotal role in ensuring students to develop a global mindset through global education, through the disciplines that they offer through their institutions. How should this scrutinizing of the right study course take place?
Right, it's indeed a very interesting question, actually. I would say the right study course obviously depends on, I would say, two factors. The first obviously has to start more internally with the personal factor. And then the second I will touch on is more the institutional factor, which is looking for the proper institution to pursue your education. Just to answer that question, the first thing which we must understand, I think, is education is one of your biggest investments, actually. Investment in money, effort, time and emotions as well, actually. And you've got to approach that decision with a very, very long-termist view, actually. You've got to map out. Interestingly, research shows the biggest difference between successful and highly successful people is it's not skill, but rather taking a very long-term view of things. Where your long-term thinking always results in better short-term decision making, actually. I mean, if I just touch on that's one of the biggest problems we see in companies. They are so short-term focused that they forget that long-term, and in the process things get messed up. So with educationers as well, I would like to take that same view. Have a very, very long-term focus in terms of where you're heading, actually. Now, to answer that question in a bit of detail, I don't know, Sabrina, whether you're aware of this very popular Japanese concept which has been headlining recently, called Ikigai. Are you aware of this?
Yes, of course.
In this concept, for the listeners, if I say the Ikigai is one of those interesting concepts where four things need to connect. And that's where I would like to start with education. The first two things that need to connect, I think, is your passion for what you like to do, and obviously your natural skill set of what you're doing. So even in an educational qualification, I encourage people to focus on that first, because that is what is going to get you out of bed, and that's what's going to be your motivation for doing whatever you're doing. The second, naturally, is what does society want, and what can you be paid for at the end of the day. Yes, all of us like to be accountants. Yes, all of us like to be engineers, doctors. But is that all the world needs? Right? We need other professions. We need hairdressers, others who's going to cut our hair, We need broadcasters. Otherwise, where is the entertainment? That's all got to be there. So you've got to map this entire thing out. You've got to understand what do you really want to do. Plus, where is the world heading? The problems we had 10 years ago, the problems we have today are different. That has called for a new set of skills, a new set of jobs and so forth. So when choosing your future career, you need to be thinking of these. Once you've made that decision, obviously, the next is that institution, where do I do this in? How do we do that? Obviously, the brand names can never go wrong, but the brand names are expensive, right? That's something.
That's the reality.
That's reality, right? Nothing does come cheap. But the next thing, obviously, is nothing comes easy as well. So if there are institutions out there that are promising the miracle, study in 3 months will get you your degree, you've got to think there's something wrong there. So I believe when you're looking for an institution, obviously the brand does matter. The government accreditations do matter, and also the entry requirements also do matter. If those entry requirements are absolutely watered down and seem too easy, it may seem too good to be true as well. So we need to look at for a multiple of these things. And also at any point in time, I would say, before embarking on this long-term journey, talk to the industry experts, talk to the consultants, talk to a few employers. They'll know, they can direct you in which direction the markets are moving, and the skill sets.
Do we have many opportunities today for the youth
to study in Sri Lanka, is it?
To study in Sri Lanka, as well as for them to get more in-depth awareness with regard to these options? Do we carry out actually very successful career guidance programs? Do we do that?
No. You're absolutely right, Sabrina. It's very limited actually in its scope, and these are things I've been pushing towards, at least from my institutional end. We just to put it into perspective, every month we've got a lot of representatives directly flying down from the universities, doing workshops, educating these people about the future courses that are available and so forth. But as usual, the participation is still relatively limited, So I just encourage people to just reach out and rather than burning the bank, there are so many good options out there in a lot of other countries that can give you that quality education at that very affordable price point actually, and these need to be focused on.
And let's look forward for more awareness campaigns probably, where maybe especially students who are in the rural areas, who are slightly perplexed with regard to the entire concept, isn't it? Education is the most powerful weapon which can use to change the world, is a thought shared by Nelson Mandela. Certainly, it's extremely very obvious that education has the subtle power to enhance and improve a person's life, contributing to stabilizing a progressive world. I'm certain you do have your own interpretation of defining the true essence of education.
I think the interesting word you highlighted was subtle actually. It is very subtle because like I was saying, it's in the short term, what can happen is the sword can win, right? And the sword is mighty, and it's been proven across from history where the intellectual thinkers, the Renaissance people have been prosecuted. Even in Sri Lanka, we see the educated are sometimes marginalized, where you have I would like to use words with the bullies on top there, which are bullying their way through and getting things done, even bending constitutions to a certain extent and so forth. But certainly, what I see is, you can't fool a person forever. You can't. It's not possible. Sri Lankan youth are getting smarter, and that was quite evident in their active role in bringing a lot of cultural change actually. So in the long run, I believe, yes, education will win with people becoming smarter, people becoming more aware. And obviously the change happens internally. And I don't know whether you're aware of this interesting law called the law of correspondence. I've heard of this.
Not really.
The law of correspondence basically says is your inner world becomes your outer world. So whatever changes you start making from within obviously start manifesting themselves out there. So all of this educational processes, the mental processes we go through, the changes in our values, our attitudes, obviously start to transmit and eventually starts to come out to society in better decisions, better actions, and so forth kind of down the line. And that's it. I mean, a lot of people forget that education it doesn't have to be formal. It can be it could be self-education itself. But something quite interesting, this is the science behind this. Why we as sapiens or humans are kind of up there is our brain. Right? And this brain houses close to 100 billion neurons, actually a lot. So every time there's an education process that happens, our brains have the brain cells have a way of coming together, which the scientists use a word called neuroplasticity. I'm sure you've heard of this word. Now, the interesting thing is, each brain, or every time these brain cells connect, we've got about 20,000 connections between these cells. So where I'm taking this is, at any point in time, this human brain is taking the 100 billion neurons and connecting it to another 20,000, which exponentially, if you think about this, is 100 billion to the power 20,000. That is the average amount of thoughts one human brain can average. That's a big number.
Certainly, yes.
But now the interesting thing becomes this. Imagine if you take one brain and you link it with another brain, imagine the amount of thoughts that create. Now link it with another. Imagine the thoughts it creates. Now if you link so many of these brains together, you can change the world. You can change the world positively. And I don't know why people can't see that and work together, actually.
Why can't they see this number?
Exactly. It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal, the change that can be brought.
But are there also forums where these young leaders get to come and showcase their all other skills which attributes to be a proper corporate leader?
Interestingly, right now, the only forum I can think of is social media. But again, very controversial, because on social media you've got these people making things like TikTok videos, which I don't know whether that's the correct role model impact. But I wish the rest of the leaders, now for example in China, you have most of these business magnates, from the Jack Ma's through the people coming and being present on these platforms and actually positively motivating people in different ways. So I urge our corporate leaders to actually use these platforms also in different ways to mold the youth, actually. Because they are reaching out for, all of us want role models.
Very badly.
Very badly. The problem is, like you said, I just reverse it the other way around. What we've got is the bad role models. Unfortunately. That's a reality that has to be spoken of.
And that's not the kind of role models we should be certainly looking up to.
Following. Exactly.
So I think we have to seriously look at pathways of venturing into these. Very interesting, of course, because there's so much to speak about when the word alone revolves around education.
Exactly.
Back again with 11th hour, and we are in conversation with Dr. Shaan Jayasekera, Director, KC Overseas and Alpha Business School, speaking on the lines of scrutinizing transformational education. Getting back to our next question, Doctor, what exactly are global accredited educational courses that would add true potential for a student based in a developing country such as Sri Lanka?
Right. Back again, we've got a fair share of courses in the country, but again, it depends on what field you wish to study in. Now, for example, if I talk from my own perspective, which is the field of accounting and finance, we've got courses ranging from ACCA, which is the largest accounting body in the world, actually, which has close to about 500,000 members across. So those are highly accredited, actually. And what I mean by highly accredited is not only would you have a recognized qualification, but also it serves as a very good entry requirement to higher studies. Most universities across the world recognize these into their master's programs. So back again, we've got courses like CIMA, again, that have that accreditation. Then courses like CFA, which focuses on the investment management side of things. So in any field, I believe that there are so many recognized courses. I can only talk of the area which I focus on, which is accounting and finance, but in the fields of engineering, in the fields of HR, in the fields of actuarial sciences. I mean, it's just a matter of, as I said again, going for the brand names, going for those institutions that have been around for a long time. Now things like ACCA are clocking 100 plus years in their operations. Their accessibility across the world is great. So again, it boils down to that question, what do you want to be in life, What is your passion?
And also, Doctor, as we all know, an accredited educational course is definitely costly. So there are also students who are in the middle level who tend to believe in all these sometimes mushroom universities and study courses, which is affordable. Sometimes there's a 50-50 recognition too. So what sort of a perspective do you share? I mean, would that be a stepping stone for someone to reach out to some kind of a discipline, for them to probably get into something which has an accredited qualification at the back of your name?
Yes. We've honestly come across a lot of issues like this, actually. Now, for example, at KCU overseas, where we worked with close to about 800 licensed universities. When we are doing the student placement, because we are
these universities are local or international?
No, they're all international. They're all
right.
international.
So these 800 licensed international universities.
International universities. So as licensed agents, we have the right to handle the paperwork, request the educational qualifications, and you'd be surprised, Sabrina, that some of these the certificates themselves are forged. Right?
Okay.
They themselves are forged. And certain institutions are not even recognized by these foreign bodies.
There is absolutely no ranking.
No ranking whatsoever. Not even a ranking. There is no existence even of these bodies. That's the whole thing. So I feel kind of like sorry for these people who put in not just the financial investment, but the effort, the emotional effort, into doing these qualifications, and them not having a future kind of in the process. So that is why at the beginning itself I started off, the journey towards education is an investment. And you need to move towards this carefully. The easiest is not always the wisest. So you need to scrutinize. I mean, today, Sabrina, we have access to so much of information. In fact, I would say, well, we are living in an age where we have information overload, actually, where we're just bombarded. So just by just running a basic search bar, search for this particular course you're trying to do. Look at what opens up. Look at where the link takes you to. Look at, reviews put down by other people. Just do some basic scrutiny.
But sadly, Doctor, it is not being done by the youth,
exactly.
Even on a basic course, like maybe even at least a computer course.
Exactly. Or talk to the peers, talk to certain, like for example.
Dig into it, rather.
Exactly, dig into it. I mean, the sad thing is, before the youth buys a phone, right? They will do their research. They will go on YouTube.
Extended research is being done.
Absolutely extended research. When this is the biggest investment you're making in your life.
Where they can buy about 100 phones.
100 phones down the line, So this is where people like us or other lecturers or people who have been in this industry for some time, just talk to them, just spend some time with them.
And do your own research.
Exactly. Do your own research as well, You have access to the information.
Or ask for help.
Ask for help, exactly.
Do not hesitate. True enough. And also, global education is a knowledge-based acquiring approach that broadens a student's perspectives and supports a pupil to perceive the bigger picture one day in being placed in the corporate world. Enlighten us more about the unmeasurable opportunities.
Oh my God. It's I would say education. Okay, so interestingly, the way I look at education is it's kind of your biggest asset. And why I say that, Sabrina, is everyone thinks of assets like cars, houses, businesses. Yes, these are assets, I would never say, but they're very volatile assets. And what I mean is fortunes are gained, they're lost immediately. And I've seen that happen. I've actually seen that happen. But a person who's educated, till they die, it's in their brain. That can't be stolen either, actually. The only asset you can't loot is education. if you think about it. So I have seen people who have lost everything, but with their education, you're able to rebuild everything back again. Right? So that becomes the greatest catalyst, actually. To take the second path, I think education does not always take you to a corporate, and I don't see you need to be in a corporate. And I'll illustrate this way. Through your education, I believe there are two paths in front of you. Be either employer or be employee. Right? So take matters into your own hands, right, where you run your own businesses. The only difference with education, which I see of running a business, is I don't think you be called a businessman anymore. You be more called an industrialist. And there is a big difference. Industrialists care about societies. They care about employment. They care about communities. Whereas a businessman just cares about profitability and profits and betterment for oneself. The true industry. So what I believe is education will make you what I would like to use an interesting word, a ethical businessman, who's more thinking of sustainability, more thinking about others than themselves initially. Right? So you've got that choice in front of you. In fact, that is what I did. I mean, with my education, I could have very easily been, and my friends still ask me, why aren't you heading a company? Why aren't you in, the head of finance or whatever? But I said, that's not my passion. My passion is teaching. My passion always has been in education. But I opened my own institute. Today, the education that I've got helps me manage each of these institutes, helps me manage people, helps me manage finances.
While you do what you like to do.
While you do what you like to do as well. So that's one pathway that is always open to you, taking matters into your own hand and moving. The second, obviously, is if you think based on preferences, the career is what you're looking for, certainly the education will help you reach the platforms up there down the line. But again, what we must understand is whilst your education is important, what matters also is your hard work, your perseverance, determination. And I think just before the show, we were actually just talking about this as well. Your emotional intelligence more than anything else. How well you can manage yourself, how well you can manage others, how well you can relate to others. I think the human being is the only resource that when it comes through a door brings a kind of a baggage of things, attitudes, egos, personal problems.
True.
And it's such a variable resource. Every day the way you manage this is different. It's not like managing finances, which is
it's
has
not
no
printed
feelings.
in a book.
Exactly.
It's like hands-on experience.
Exactly.
And go out there and experience it.
So today we've got like so many different educational programs, unlike before actually, that teach different sets of competencies actually.
So you're quite pleased about the programs which is offered, is it, in many of the renowned institutions in Sri Lanka?
No, I'm not. Actually, I'm not. Because again, I can't blame the institutions as well. Because at the end of the day, running institutes is not cheap. The rent is very expensive. The overheads are very expensive. And they've got to have numbers for them to make this work. So naturally what happens is they will always focus on those mainstream programs, accounting, finance, marketing, business management, which honestly is dime a dozen, to be very honest. But there are so many specialized fields. I mean, I'll just use some of these words. I don't know whether it will make sense. Now, for example, certain degrees like Internet of Things, cryptocurrencies, blockchain technologies, artificial intelligence, data analytics, business analytics. These are the hot courses that are trending.
Future-based programs.
Those are the futures. Unfortunately, Sri Lanka does not still offer that infrastructure.
But do we have the right people to teach?
That, I believe, can be developed over time because there are experts. I mean, there are a lot of people who've actually ventured out. They've studied out there. They've
So there is a group of people.
There is a group of people. It's just a matter of, even at my institute, we are trying to look at a certain, it's always taking a risk actually, because it makes sense to go in line with what the rest are doing in the market actually, because that's a safer way. But the safe way is not always the exciting way also,
Education is a
yes,
challenge.
It is a challenge. So we are trying to look at the possibility of bringing certain new programs into the country. But for the time being, I would say those who are really interested. Now, interestingly, I have certain French universities that offer MScs as specialized in champagne and wine management, as specialized as that.
It has gone to that
It has gone
level.
to that level of specialism because those are the skill sets which the world needs actually.
Yeah, if you're talking about tourism, yes.
Exactly. So the mainstream skill sets, yes, it'll get you so far, but no further.
It'll restrict you.
It'll restrict you.
We are in conversation with Dr. Shaan Jayasekera, Director, KC Overseas and Alpha Business School. Getting back to the topic which we are discussing, that is scrutinizing transformational education. It's been given to understand that the 20th century learning environment was much more focused on dishing out a standard of a cookie-cutter approach, while the 21st century learning environment widens the thinking levels to authentic, real-world-based problems that make it relatable to students. Your viewpoint on these, please, Doctor.
It's honestly a very, very interesting question actually, but I'll start it this way. The biggest problem we had, which you mentioned earlier, was the education system itself developed in an era of the Industrial Revolution. That's the first thing we need to understand. So the Industrial Revolution was all about mechanization. It was about, it was about technicalities. And if you think about that Industrial Revolution, what happened was you had about 20% to 10% of people who were managers, and you had about 80 to 90% of people who are workers. If you still look at it this way, our education system gives priority to the technical courses, the accountants, the finance people, the engineering people and so forth, which again is clearly in line with that industrial, that particular system actually, In fact, if you think about it, even the classrooms we created was like in the line of mass production. And when I say mass production is, in mass production you create a batch of goods, each batch moving to each other. We even took batches and created where we put girls into one classroom, boys into another classroom, people of the same age into one classroom. So we actually created that assembly line batch technique even when it comes to education. But today the world has completely changed. And why I say that complete change is, today we need not mechanical thinking, we need creative thinking. We need problem solvers. And I actually tell this, this is a...
Sincerely needed.
And this is the interesting thing. All of us, when we go to workplaces, we've got positions, we've got name tags. And the reason why we have these boards or positions is for us to get the work done. If I was to remove all these boards and just have one board on everybody, I would use just one title: Chief Problem Solver. That's it.
Just one designation.
Just one designation. All of us are problem solving in different ways. Our job will not exist if the society did not have a problem. That's the problem. Society's problems are changing, and our rules also need to change to solve those problems.
Whether we like it or not.
Whether we like it or not. That is why we have to go through this process of, we call it today, unlearning, relearning, reskilling, whatever it takes, because the problems are different. And you can now see, compared to before, still today, this is the biggest gripe I have with our local education system. Our local education system still gives preference and prominence to the STEM courses, I would say, the science, the mathematics, the
traditional level.
So for example, even in schools, if you're in the science stream, if you're in the math stream, you're the bright student, the brighter they call it. But if you're in the arts and the languages and the histories, you're the dumb kid, the dropout. I mean, look at this, Sabrina. To me, what I see is the people who are earning the highest amount of money in this world are the creative people. They are the designers, they are the musicians, because that skill can't be replicated.
Maybe they're only qualified up to grade 5.
Exactly. So today what we see is the educational programs are focusing more on art, music, creativity. And you have, so now for example, just the qualification I mentioned some time back, in Australia, there is an interesting trending course which is called art therapy, which is basically art for people who are psychologically disturbed, trauma driven and so forth. Now, look how specialized those courses are, because today most Western countries have achieved economic prosperity. But with this economic prosperity, there's a different series of problems. Depression rates are high,
People are not happy.
Exactly. See, the biggest problem in this world, which you see in the West especially, is an aging population. Now, the way you solve a problem of an aging population is we need caregivers. Believe me right now if I tell you, your chances of your getting your residency in countries like Australia, in countries like the UK, are much higher if you do a qualification on caregiving rather than accountancy, to be very, very honest in the process.
That's the need at the moment.
That's the need at the moment, and that's the need in the future
too
as well. So what I'm encouraging people is to talk to the industry experts and understand the need of the future. Because your education is an investment in the future, not an investment today.
Not a temporary measure.
Not a temporary measure, exactly.
How would you elaborate on the student empowerment's positive influence to be a catalyst toward change?
Again, like I told you, it is a massive catalyst of change, because an educated student always, or an educated person's behavior starts to change, attitudes start to change. There's a plethora of things that get associated with this indirectly, kind of down the line. And we see when a person is behaving in a particular way. Interestingly, we use that person, my God, such an educated person. Actually, interestingly, it naturally comes
like
out.
Like a tagline.
Actually. It's a tagline, exactly. It's a tagline. And it's quite visible in how they conduct themselves. So what I believe is, if we want macro change, like for example, Gandhi or Mohandas or Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change you want to see. So obviously when the change happens from within, that law of correspondence back again would suggest, the change starts to manifest itself outwardly. And we can see most of it, especially in countries like Europe. The young populations today, they're so environmentally conscious, they're so socially conscious. And that behavior is transmitting. Actually, things like, veganism is on the rise. So you can see how those individualistic changes are contributing towards the bigger picture, actually. So even in Sri Lanka, I believe the youth is different, I guess, they conduct themselves differently right now.
So you do see a vivid change.
There is a change, actually. I see that, for the last 23 years of me being in classrooms, I see those visible changes, coming about, actually. So
let's leave it on a positive note.
Exactly. Let's hope this trend does continue. But like I said, all these people need mentors, and I encourage all of those, corporate magnates, those leaders to come forward and, spend time with these kids, guide them along the right path.
Probably they'll be a best investment for their very own companies.
Exactly.
So precisely. Broaden your thinking levels in that manner.
Exactly.
Time's up. So sadly, time's up as well for me to conclude the show, Doctor. So why global education matters is a concern for most of the students soon after college level of education. Global learning encourages awareness and critical thinking about issues, and that's exactly what was illustrated during today's discussion with Dr. Shaan Jayasekera, Director, KC Overseas and Alpha Business School. Thank you so much for connecting with 11th Hour.
Thank you for having me here, Sabrina. It's a pleasure as usual.
Sabrina Zabar is signing off from 11th Hour.
11th Hour on Radio Sri Lanka illustrates the rediscovery of the glitz and the glam of the nation's most prominent entertainers and eminent personalities from the corporate sector. Join us every Monday at 11 exclusively on Radio Sri Lanka.